welcome back. Well, whenever there's a mass shooting like this, the big question is always why? Why would someone do something so depraved? The question's even more difficult when the suspected shooter, and the victims, they're high school teenagers. Let's assess what we know about the suspect in today's school shooting in Texas and his background. In San Antonio, Ron Martinelli is a forensic criminologist, and in Kansas City, Dr. Brian Russell is a psychologist and an attorney. Gentlemen, thanks for joining us. Ron, let me start with you. Is there a single part of his background, of what we've learned today, that would give you a look into motivations, level, why he walked in and started shooting people?
Sure. Well, the first thing to keep in mind is just discount the people that are telling you that there's no red flags. Because as we begin to unpack this bag psychologically, we're going to find that there were red flags. Some of them might be a little bit sublime, but they were certainly there. We're starting to see perhaps a ticking time bomb, which I've written about extensively. This person probably felt isolated. He was certainly suicidal. And what I'm seeing in active shooters, 40% of which commit suicide or suicide by cop, is that they do experience suicidal ideations. So the reason for suicide is to end pain, emotional pain, psychological pain. This person probably was experiencing some sort of pain. It could have been bullying coming from a variety of areas, but we're looking for now a precipitating event that caused this person to explode.
Well, Dr. Russell, you mentioned talking about being bullied potentially. Here's some sound referring to the shooter that might give us some insight. Listen.
He was really quiet. He mostly kept to himself, and I know he's picked on. He was picked on by coaches, other students. Didn't really talk to anyone. My friends from the football team told me that coaches say that he smelled like right in front of his face, you know. And then like other kids just sit there, like look at him, laugh at him, talk about him. Nothing like physical, but they still, you know, emotionally bullied him.
We've heard from other classmates that say he was a cool guy, he was quiet, kept to himself, but seemed fairly normal. Bullying unfortunately happens all over the place and doesn't lead people to pull triggers on other folks. What do you make of that?
Well, people process stress and bullying differently. Some people commit suicide, some people commit homicide, some people do both. So every person has a different psyche, and which can trigger an emotional and behavioral response. This is a very severe response. So that's why I'm telling you, as we unpack this bag, we're going to find more out about this young man, because nobody wakes up in the morning and says, well, I'm going to go out and I'm going to kill 10 people and wound 10 other people and plant a bunch of bombs at the school. Well, this was a planned event.
It sure was. Dr. Russell, there's a new headline out that just before we came to air that might have another particular detail in the Houston Chronicle. It's saying that the shooter, the 17-year-old, admitted gunning down his classmates, according to police. He spared the students that he liked so he could have his story told. What might it tell you about him that he wanted his story told and ultimately did not commit suicide at the end of the day?
Sadly, Pete, there are people in this world, and there are high school students for whom this role that has sort of been created in our culture since Columbine, this role of the school shooter, is for some of them the only role they can see themselves playing that gives them any power or any meaning as individuals. I think it's very important for people to think about what was the first word that went through your mind when you heard about this today. And a lot of people will say sicko, psycho. But if you look at the calculated, the calculation, the conniving, the concealment, all of this conscious decision-making that went into it, you can see that, is this a mentally healthy kid? Obviously not. But that's not mental illness. What is it? It is a narcissistic phenomenon where somebody becomes so wrapped up. It could be that they think they're superior to everybody. It could be that they think they're inferior to everybody and they want to finally get some power, some notoriety, whatever. But they feel entitled to indulge that at the expense of other people's very lives. That's not mental illness. That is a sociopathy, a psychopathy rooted in narcissism. And as we've discussed, there are always precursors to that, always signs, and we're going to find some here. And we've got to heed those signs. And for those few people where the signs are not enough and they still slip through the cracks, as your previous guests have said, we've got to harden the targets.
Ron, we only have a couple seconds here. We haven't heard much about the parents. Do you suspect that, to your point about there were red flags. Someone close to him knew something.
Yes, and I agree. Somebody's going to come up sooner or later, and they're going to tell us a lot more about this person. You might get some indications from the parents, but I will tell you that probably the friends closest to him will be the people that provide you with the motive for this crime. Right now, there are 5 motives to active shooting, one of which is revenge. This is not anti-government sentiment. It's not anti-religious sentiment. It's not an act of terrorism, as we know terrorism to be. So we're going to take a look at the revenge motive. The other motive would be pure evil.
Yeah.
So it may be a combination of both.
Can't rule that out either. Ron, Brian, as much as I don't like talking about the motivations of someone that shouldn't matter, it does matter in our society today if we're going to get to the bottom of these problems. Thank you both. Appreciate it. All right. Well.